Stories, Philippines podcast.
A darkness permeates this episode, touching on scenes and themes some may find deeply unsettling. The veil of comfort will be lifted. Listener caution is not optional. Imagine the feeling of cold, unforgiving stone pressed against your cheek. The air is thick and damp, carrying the scent of old wood, rust, and the faintest hint of incense that has long since faded. You are standing inside a wall, not next to one, but inside the very bedrock of a history so heavy it seems to resist the light of the sun. This stone remembers the slow, deliberate work of Spanish laborers, the weight of gold and power, and the sudden, sharp, terrified gasp of a man condemned. The sound is not a whisper nor a shout, it is a choked, sustained lament, a profound sadness that seems to emanate from the earth beneath your feet and echo through the ancient moss-covered ramparts. It is the cry of a soul that found no peace, not even in death, and now spends eternity chained to the very location of its greatest sin. The city of Intramuros is called the Walled City, and for good reason. Its massive stone fortifications stand as a declaration of power and permanence, a pocket of colonial Spain transplanted onto tropical soil. But behind the walls, history is rarely neat, and faith can be corrupted. What happens when the keeper of sacred vows breaks them? What spectral, indelible mark does a priest leave when he trades his salvation for earthly treasure and then meets a violent, self-inflicted end? Is it a guilt that binds him, or something far older and more malevolent? In the gloom of a forgotten corner of the walled city, the story begins. Not with a vision of a saint, but with the hollow echo of a fall. A sickening sound that no one heard clearly then, but one that the stone, the soil, and the air around a particular church have never forgotten. It is the story of a man of God who lost his head, both literally and figuratively, and the unending, chilling legacy of his eternal torment. I am Paul, and you're listening to Stories Philippines podcast. The Philippines for over 300 years was a spiritual outpost of the Spanish crown. The colonial project was inextricably linked to the Catholic mission. The church was not just a place of worship, it was the bank, the treasury, the school, the government, and the social heart of every established town. Inside the walls of Intramuros, the city was dominated by enormous, beautiful churches and the sprawling convents of powerful religious orders, the Augustinians, the Dominicans, the Franciscans. They built structures designed to last 1,000 years, fortresses for the spirit as much as for the physical body. This immense power brought with it the eternal temptation of corruption. The promise of asceticism and poverty often clashed with the reality of immense wealth accumulated through tithes, land ownership, and hidden treasures brought over from Spain or gained through the highly profitable galleon trade. The priests and friars were not just simple men of faith, many were also shrewd businessmen, political operators, and the de facto rulers of their parishes. It is here, in the shadow of the altar, where the most unsettling stories take root. The concept is found across the world, from the buried treasures of the Knights Templar in Europe to the cursed gold of ancient Incan ruins. When a sacred site becomes a repository for profane wealth, the resulting spiritual energy can be catastrophic. The line between devotion and greed becomes blurred, and the dark history begins to write itself within the consecrated stone. In the late 1700s, during the height of Spanish rule, the air inside Intramuros was thick with the scent of cigars, damp stone, and political intrigue. There existed within one of the grand churches a specific Dominican father, let us call him Father Domingo, though his real name is lost, or perhaps deliberately scrubbed from the dusty convent registers. Father Domingo was a man consumed by the desire for something more than spiritual grace. He was tasked with overseeing a portion of the church's enormous wealth, which included silver artifacts, jewels donated by wealthy parishioners, and possibly a hidden cache of gold intended for emergency use or covert trade. This wealth was often kept not in a visible safe but in a secret chamber, perhaps beneath the high altar or sealed within a crypt wall. The idea of hidden treasure within these ancient places is not mere fiction. The threat of invasion, piracy, and local revolt made it a practical necessity for the religious orders to hide their most valuable assets. These secrets were known only to a trusted few, and they became the undoing of Father Domingo. He began to skim, small amounts at first, an untraceable piece of silver here, a handful of coins there, but the sickness of avarice is progressive. It demands more, growing like a spiritual cancer. The fear of discovery tightened around his throat, a spiritual noose crafted by his own hand. He was not just stealing from the church, he was stealing from God, violating his sacred vows in the most profound way. His internal torment became unbearable. The sight of the altar, which once gave him comfort, now felt like a spotlight on his sin. The weight of the impending confession, the certain damnation, and the social ruin of being exposed as a corrupt priest in a small, gossipy colonial city drove him to a breaking point. One afternoon, not long before the scheduled transport of the newly accumulated wealth to another location, Father Domingo snapped. The story, whispered in hushed tones by the city's caretakers and old families for generations, varies in its particulars, but the core remains shockingly consistent. He was found at the base of the tallest bell tower, having thrown himself from its heights. The resulting trauma to his body was so severe that the most gruesome detail, the one that makes the tale so persistent, became instantly and tragically clear. His head was separated from his body. The church, desperate to bury the scandal of a suicidal, possibly corrupted priest, rushed to deal with the aftermath. They quickly declared it an accident, or, in some versions, hushed up the true nature of his death, fearing the damage it would do to their reputation and the faith of the local populace. The body was interred in unhallowed ground or a forgotten corner of the crypt, with no marker, no proper ceremony. The secret of his sin and his death was sealed not only by the church's powerful influence, but also by the very stones of the walled city. This is the kind of raw, unresolved emotional and spiritual tragedy that folklore feeds upon. The Filipino belief in the enduring power of a restless spirit is ancient and deep. We do not just believe in ghosts, we believe in the multo, a soul trapped by unfinished business, by a trauma so intense it refuses to leave the mortal plane, or by a curse. Father Domingo's tragedy fulfilled all three conditions: a dark secret, a traumatic death, and a spiritual damnation. International folklore holds countless parallels. Consider the spectral Black Dog of England, tied to places of execution and death, or the legendary Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow, a Hessian trooper killed by a cannonball who now eternally searches for his lost head. In the Philippines, the figure of the headless priest is a uniquely potent symbol. It combines the trauma of a violent death with the profound spiritual weight of a failed man of God. The head represents intellect, control, and spiritual leadership. To lose it is to lose one's eternal rest and identity. He is forever searching for the peace, the closure, and perhaps the spiritual absolution that he violently denied himself. The stories say he is most often seen near the bell tower of the church he betrayed, or sometimes wandering the desolate, mossy corridors atop the intramuros walls. He is described as a shadow, wearing the distinct, now tattered white robes of his order, but he possesses no face, only a spectral space where his head should be. Sometimes his hands are clasped as if still in prayer, eternally begging for forgiveness he cannot articulate. A group of friends recently organized a paranormal tour of Intramuros. They had decided to first meet up in Manila, near the site of an old horse racing track, a place now transformed into a major commercial center. The city itself is layered with history. Before the concrete and steel of the current development, the area was a racetrack, a place of excitement, high emotion, and immense financial gambles. All of this intense, focused human energy, whether joy or despair, can leave an imprint. One of the tour members, an investigator named Sergey, pointed out a section of the mall, explaining a previous investigation where some sensitive individuals saw what they described as a flood of spiritual blood in that very location. Not physical blood, but a non-physical manifestation of tragedy and violence. Can a place be so saturated with collective trauma that the spiritual residue manifests as a psychic flood? It is a fascinating question that sits at the intersection of spiritual belief and quantum physics. The idea that emotional energy, like all energy, is never truly destroyed but merely transformed and stored, the emotional investment in a high-stakes sport like horse racing, coupled with the potential for accidents and dark dealings that are a part of that world, could theoretically charge the location with a powerful, unresolved energy signature. Inside the mall, near an escalator, the group's leader recounted the story of another repeated anomaly, a glass barrier that would shatter every night when the mall was empty. The damage would be discovered the next morning, necessitating constant repair. The supposed culprit? The spirit of an electrician who died during the mall's construction, electrocuted while working on the cables. The sheer kinetic energy of a spirit's anger or frustration, focused night after night on a single point of weakness, could, in theory, exert enough force to cause a seemingly random physical breaking of glass. This location also held the story of a child's spirit often mistaken for a lost living child by security guards, only for the child to vanish a moment later. It was believed to be the non-corporal son of one of the supervisors who tragically passed away as an infant. The belief that the supervisor could still speak with the child in that place, connecting across the veil, is a profound expression of parental love overcoming death. The group's itinerary led them to another downtown commercial complex, often called the Mall of Manila. Here, a central courtyard, open to the sky and filled with greenery, reminded one of the members of a local folklore element, a nature spirit, or diwata, believed to reside in the garden within the mall. The question was posed, was it coincidence that their journey to the ancient walled city was taking them through these modern layered places, each with its own intense, charged history? Then, an unsettling detail came to light. While sitting near a coffee shop, Sergey referenced a photograph taken by a friend, a picture deliberately focused on a coffee cup, but clearly showing a child's hand pointing at the glass. The skin of the hand, however, was disturbingly decayed, almost rotting. The friend swore no child was with her when the picture was taken. This kind of photographic evidence where something appears that should not is a classic feature of paranormal investigation, a seemingly accidental capture of a chilling reality. Finally, the group arrived at the walled city. The shift in atmosphere from the bright commercial centers to the ancient stone of Intramuros is immediate and profound. The walls themselves are a palpable presence, monuments to centuries of power, siege, and violence. One of the team members, Janus, sensed an intense feeling of joy near a particular spot, a feeling that seemed out of place in such a grave location. Sergey confirmed that this area was the former stage for the Zarzuela, a light-hearted Spanish comedic performance. Even within the walls of a colonial fortress, human beings crave entertainment, and the residual energy of collective laughter and enjoyment can linger just as sorrow does. They walked past what used to be old Spanish-era police precincts and prisons. Here, the energy shifted dramatically. 3 of the group members, Dian, Janus, and the narrator, sensed a shared feeling of anxiety, sadness, and anger. This is the energy of collective trauma. Imagine the centuries of fear, injustice, and despair contained within those walls. The emotional imprints of the prisoners remain, staining the stone like a permanent emotional residue. As they walked, a sudden, jarring moment of absurdity broke the tension. A mentally ill man ran past them shouting, "The vampires are here!" The human mind, especially one that is already fragile, is often an antenna for unseen energies. Was the man simply having a delusion? Or was his fractured mind perceiving something real? Something dark in the ancient shadows of the city? Their journey led them to a historic church, famous for its bamboo organ and, more chillingly, for news reports that it was slowly sinking into the ground. A fascinating metaphor. Even the strongest fortress of faith is eventually swallowed by the weight of time and the earth. Outside, by a fountain, Sergey pointed to the summit of the church's bell tower. Another team member, JM, with possibly a heightened sensitivity, immediately saw something. A person in white with long hair, it is jumping. Sir J then elaborated, correcting the assumption of a female figure. That is not a woman. That is a Dominican priest who took his own life by jumping from the very top. He has long hair, which is why he is often mistaken for a woman. He is seen repeatedly jumping from the peak and then reappearing to jump again, over and over. This is the classic image of the headless priest of Intramuros. He is not a one-time vision, he is a permanent fixture trapped in the loop of his final violent act. He is a representation of the theological concept of eternal damnation, a spirit not allowed to pass on, forced to repeat his sin as his penance. Invited by their leader, the team members approached the tower's wall. They were asked to place their hands on the cold stone, close their eyes, and use their minds to reach the top of the tower. The narrator tried this technique, a form of remote viewing or psychometry, using the physical connection to the stone to access the residual memory and energy. As he mentally ascended the spiral stairs of the tower, a strange physical sensation occurred. He felt his hands begin to lift away from the stone as if an unseen force was gently pushing them back. When he opened his eyes, his hands were indeed a few inches from the wall. Janus reported the exact same experience. What force would repel someone from that wall? Was it the priest's personal, residual energy, a spectral barrier of his own intense final solitude? Or was it a more protective entity, a celestial force trying to warn the living away from the site of a sacred tragedy? Whatever the reason, the wall itself seemed to reject the connection. As night fell, the group reached Fort Santiago, the ancient citadel within Intramuros. Just as they neared the gate, a shared powerful visual anomaly occurred. One member saw a man wearing a civil guard uniform pass through the solid gate, a spectacle that was impossible for any living person. The gate, with its tiny, narrow openings, could not be traversed, yet the spirit of a Spanish-era guard was seen walking through it as if it were air. Fort Santiago is perhaps the most intensely charged location in the city, having been used as a prison and place of torture by 3 different colonial powers. The psychic residue here is overwhelming, and it is entirely plausible that the residual energy of an old guard still standing watch was perceived by the group. The night concluded with discussions at Luneta Park, a place of historical significance where the group processed the layered intensity of the walled city. The conclusion was undeniable. Whether seen as hallucinations or real entities, the ghosts of the past are still alive in the structures of Intramuros. But the dark secrets of the human heart are not confined to ancient walls. Sometimes, the most unsettling darkness lurks behind a normal face in a normal setting. The year is 2020, the height of the global pandemic. The world is gripped by a fearful stillness. A young woman, let us call her Sarah, has just started a new job at a call center. The routine is dictated by the strange new rules of the time. Limited capacity shuttle buses, strict social distancing, and a mask covering every face. The only contact is visual, a necessary distance between every human being. The loneliness of the era was profound. On the shuttle, Sarah repeatedly noticed a man. He seemed to struggle intensely with the new social rules, taking a long time to choose his seat, often standing awkwardly before settling into the mandated empty space. One day, he sat across from her, smiled, and she felt a fleeting connection across the required separation. Days turned into a routine. The shuttle, the work, the isolation. Then, the man she recognized only from the bus appeared at the same time as her in the dining area. He introduced himself as Eric, a new hire like her. She, unable to stop her curiosity, asked him why he took so long to choose a seat. He laughed, explaining he simply was not used to people being so separated, making him overthink the social distance. An easy, light companionship began to form. They talked daily, in the shuttle, during breaks, after work. The enforced separation seemed to foster a deeper, non-physical intimacy, a connection of shared vulnerability in a time of global anxiety. They visited local spots, the seaside, a closed fair, and even, poetically, the ancient haunted walls of Intramuros. He was kind, quiet, respectful, a truly gentle presence. When the rules relaxed slightly, allowing 2 people on a motorcycle, he became her dedicated chauffeur. Sarah felt a profound, gentle bond. Their skins had not touched, yet they understood each other completely. The absence of physical intimacy seemed to have made their emotional connection more pure, more meaningful. One night, Eric invited her to his home. His parents, he said, wanted to meet her, and his mother had prepared a meal. Sarah was hesitant. What were they to each other exactly? Yet she was touched by the invitation and the perceived warmth. Eric's family lived in a large, wealthy-looking house, isolated from neighbors. As Sarah entered, she felt a subtle, heavy, deeply unsettling aura. A feeling of dread she could not articulate, a deep wrongness that settled in her stomach. She considered leaving, but his mother, a striking woman with a dramatic, dark-shaded makeup style, greeted her warmly, making her feel welcome despite the strange atmosphere. Dinner was served on a long table where the social distance was naturally maintained. The conversation was long and pleasant, lasting nearly an hour. Sarah was put at ease. She had judged the house too harshly. It was just an old grand home. Then came the dessert. Eric's mother made a dramatic flourish, announcing, "And for the finale!" as she carried a covered platter to the table. Eric stood up and moved behind Sarah. She looked up at him and he smiled down at her, a strange, fixed smile. His mother placed the platter in front of Sarah and slowly lifted the cover. Inside, resting on the plate, was a knife. The moment Sarah registered the horrifying object, a violent shock hit her head from behind. It was Eric. This was the first time he had truly reached out to her, his hands seizing her waist as he caught her falling body. This was not a story of isolated love in a pandemic. It was a cold, calculating trap. She was tied to the enormous table, unable to do anything but cry and beg. Her pleas were ignored. The psychological distance and lack of human empathy from her captors were total. Eric's mother took the knife and plunged it into Sarah's abdomen. The gentle, quiet man she had connected with was a psychopath, and this was not a social visit. The subtle, heavy aura of the house was the presence of a deep, practiced evil. Eric's awkwardness on the shuttle was not social anxiety. It was the intense focus of a predator choosing his prey, the prolonged, careful selection of his next victim from the isolated crowd. The dark secrets of the walled city and the horrifying betrayal in the quiet Marikina home share a common unsettling thread, the darkness that hides in plain sight. The headless priest of Intramuros is the product of a historical tragedy, a man consumed by avarice and guilt, whose spiritual damnation is etched into the stone he once vowed to uphold. He is a cautionary tale about the corruption of power and the eternal price of sin. Eric is the product of a modern terror, a man who expertly leveraged the emotional isolation of the pandemic to lure his victim into a false sense of security, revealing a monstrous core hidden behind a mask of kindness. He is a modern cautionary tale about the illusion of intimacy and the terrifying reality of human darkness. In both stories, the true monster is not a fantastical creature, but the betrayal of trust. The priest betrayed his God and his vows. Eric betrayed the simple human need for companionship. We are left with the lingering, unsettling question: how many secrets are still buried beneath the hallowed ground of our most sacred places? How many pleasant smiles hide a void of sociopathic intent? The walled city holds its trauma in stone. The human heart holds its own dark, impenetrable fortresses. Remember to submit your stories, both the historical echoes and the modern-day horrors you have encountered, to our email, storiesphpodcast@gmail.com. Find show notes and support options, including how you can help us continue this research and narrative, in the description. You can also access exclusive behind-the-scenes content and early episode releases on Patreon. Follow us on social media for daily folklore facts and updates. We walk through a world layered with ancient tragedies and fresh, terrifying betrayals. The stone remembers the priest's fall. The kitchen table remembers Sarah's last, terrified cry. The shadows are long, and they rarely tell the whole truth. What unsettling truth might be standing right behind you right now? The darkest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis. Dante Alighieri often paraphrased. Do not forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share this podcast. Support the podcast financially in ways you can find in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and until next time, be safe in the dark. Good night.